All right, welcome inside the numbers with the People's Pundit. I'm your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. Look, Wisconsin is up on locals, so if you haven't got a chance to check it out, check it out. We'll talk about it maybe a little smitey. It's why I only put it on locals because Dane and Milwaukee are a little bit high. I mean, I'm debating it. We're going to go over it. I'll show it to you, but I just don't like tweaking that much. Like if everything else looks so representative, then who are you to tell a state? Maybe Dane just is going to vote a little bit higher this time. Maybe Milwaukee will vote a little bit higher, or Dane a little bit lower, Milwaukee a little bit higher. That's maybe the way it is. So, when you're talking about such small amounts, I'm always really, really hesitant to apply even rake weights or anything like that, sort of like override it. Who the hell am I? It looks good. We'll talk about it though. Look, if you like the videos, don't forget to like them. And of course, subscribe wherever you're watching. YouTube, don't forget to hit that notification bell that will let you know when we're going to go live. You don't have to do that on Rumble, which will just let you know anyway. And of course, so does Locals, the best place to follow us. peoplespundit.locals.com, where you'll get everything early and more of it. Ethnicity, I'm going to go through. We're going to separate crosstabs for ethnicity, not race, but specific ethnicity and national origin. I thought that if I added it to the regular crosstab, it would get rather cluttered, and you wouldn't have the attention, not just you, anybody wouldn't have the attention to like really pay attention to the detail of each ethnicity. We can kind of like blaze through and go to other things. The crosstabs are already so big. But I think it's interesting. And then, of course, we're going to introduce you to how people do like multi-level regression and post-stratification, because we could do that with ethnicity, and I can show you the basics using ethnicity. We have the entire Big Six region now, out, and we could simply show you how similar demographics, the responses you gather from them are really applied to people you did not talk to, the population you didn't know certain things about them, and in layman's terms, you decide or estimate how those people would vote based on the responses of those you did speak to that are of similar demographics. Ethnicity would be a great place to start because it gets really, you talk about multi-level, it gets really, really granular, and then we can look at different demographics across those ethnicities. There's so much to look at in this poll, beyond the top lines. And I don't know what you even call it, a poll. It's a study, the entire damn region. There's just so much to glean from this. You look at the top lines and you say, okay, this jumps out at me, that jumps out at me. Every day when I'm processing new polling, I'm looking and I'm seeing something new for the first time that I think is significant. What strikes me as extremely significant with this study is that in every one of the Big Six states, the reported vote history for the two candidates in 2020 is really damn close. You know how I feel about it. You don't wait for vote history like that. I don't. And it's debatable, but I don't. Because A, what do you do with the people who didn't vote in 2020? And then B, you have to make an assumption, and this is perhaps the biggest one. You have to make an assumption of, are those people telling you the truth? Biden is extremely unpopular in some of these states. And if you're making that assumption, you're ignoring the potential that somebody who now doesn't like Joe Biden but voted for him is remiss, to be honest, and tell you that they voted for them. It is well known that unpopular presidents, people lie about supporting them. And when you're looking at a state like Ohio, you're looking at even Wisconsin, which just came out, his approval rating is garbage. Minnesota, if I was Joe Biden, I'd be terrified. Yeah, I see some of the comments, by the way, just say this, one morning consult poll and one YouGov poll. And honestly, I consider YouGov across all the different media outlets. They're the same data set. Okay. And because they got a little bit too big for their britches, they actually come to the people we work with to get additional responses. So I know what their panel is showing. And I'm telling you, I know what they do to wait to get the results. So I've always been of the mind that you better be surprised that Yahoo News, The Economist, anyone who uses YouGov, especially those two though, have Trump ahead at all. I mean, these people have grossly underestimated him for years. And just it's a matter of how their methodology. Morning consult as well, not for nothing, but recently we actually showed you how significant it was that morning consult was. Let me see if I can even find. Do I have this here? I may have it real handy, and then I could actually show you what I'm talking about. But I do indeed. Okay, so for one, I'll even show you. And I'm not picking on Morning Consult. What I'm saying is their methodology makes it difficult, not just for Republicans, but for especially the Trump coalition, because it's certain kinds of people that they have clearly had a hard time reaching. Now, that being said, we're only talking about a Biden plus one here. If Biden wants to make sure he wins the Electoral College, and doesn't risk underperforming the polls against Trump like he did in the past, he's going to need a bigger lead than Biden plus one. So, you could take your YouGov Biden plus ones and your, Morning Consult Biden plus ones and stick them on the shelf for right now. Wait to see what other people say who actually had the race a little closer. Like Emerson just polled in a similar duration, and they had Trump up by 4. Emerson had Biden in their final 2020 poll up by 5. That is very good polling. That is ballpark what it was. Wasn't plus 4, Spencer, like us, but better luck next time. No, no, it's a fantastic polling. It is. I mean, there's 1 point off. I'm just busting Spencer's chops. But to give you an idea, not only nationally, but this, and I'm going to jump into the battleground state polling in a second, but let's for a second review the Morning Consult 2020 pollster scorecard that we do. All right, we do this for tranches, right? Who's in are we seeing repeat offenders inside and outside of different tranches? I'm not going to go put a stupid grade on them like 5 turd fake. It's not my place. I just want to know, and when I'm giving people, an assessment of what I see in a poll. Is this a weighting issue? Do they see vote preference largely how we see vote preference? It's just that they're weighting differently. Is that what's going on here? So this is why we care about where people ended up. It's not so much, we're not doing it to pick on them. I just want to make this clear. We're not doing it to pick on them. We're doing it to assess the swing size other pollsters are finding, juxtaposed to ours, plus, whether or not their vote preference is roughly on par with our own, and that they have a different weighting model. They're making different assumptions, and that is what is going on. You might notice their national poll was ginormous. 14,733 likely voters. Their sampling error was supposedly less than 1%. Truth be told, sampling error is the right term to use. I can't wait for listen, I'm not going to bring back the segment with just me. I can't wait for the polling misinformation segment again. I can't. Reached out to several pollsters now. I would really, really love to be just one pollster asking another why these claims are bunk and why you shouldn't let anyone convince you otherwise. And I just heard back from one as we were talking. Laura, I'm going to have to give you his assistant so you can find a time and we can make that segment happen. Because some of these claims are just making us all, like, you can see the steam coming off the top of our heads. Some of the comments we are hearing are absolute nonsense. Now, there is a difference between a margin of error and a confidence interval. Morning Consult is largely an opt-in survey, or it's, a participation panel survey. So they are really dealing with a confidence interval, but overall use the sampling error term is more accurate than margin of error. Margin of error is only for strict randomization, but I'm not going to go down to that weed yet. We'll leave that for a segment. Anyway, 52-44 was their final result of Biden plus 8. They were able fairly reasonably to gauge Biden's overall share of the vote, but they underestimated Donald Trump by 3 points. Overall, Biden won by 4. They had him up by 8. That is outside the sampling error. Would it be a terrible poll if it was a 4.5% sampling error? No. No, not really. Would it be overstating it? Yeah. But considering they polled all these other states. It doesn't make a pattern. Now, because the sampling error is so low, it's a problem. Arizona, Biden 49, Trump 46. That race was decided by 0.3 of a percentage point. That was a three flat sampling error. That's within the sampling error. However, there is beginning to be a pattern of favoring one candidate, one party over the other. Florida, Biden +7. Well, that didn't happen, did it? Trump 51.2, Biden 47.8. That was a massive survey. 4,451 likely voters, less than a 2% sampling error. They had plenty of responses to have a representative sample, even for some squirrely little subgroups, especially Hispanics in Florida, that can really give pollsters a problem. They easily should have known these are Cubans, these are Venezuelans, these are Mexicans, these are Puerto Ricans. Some love to take these online surveys a lot more than others. And you will absolutely get more Puerto Ricans in the I-4 corridor who are dying to take those surveys than Venezuelans or Cubans in Miami. They obviously didn't do that. They did something wrong, and they very, very badly missed that poll. Missed that race. Georgia, Biden +3. Again, 0.3 of a percentage point. You're beginning to see a pattern here. You can be inside, outside of the sampling error on some of them, but you have a methodological issue if you are systematically overstating support for one candidate or another. For instance, in Minnesota, which we're going to go over, that we just polled, we overstated Biden's support. But nope, we overstated him in Wisconsin too. Never mind. Arizona, we overstated Trump a little bit within the sampling error, but you should have these overs and unders on both sides if you do not have a methodological issue. If you do, there is something inherently flawed with how you're weighting, or something. Typically, it is weighting, though. That's why we do what we do. Ohio, obviously a huge bomb. Trump won it by 8. They had Biden up by 2. So did Quinnipiac. So did the New York Times. Fox News eventually shifted to Trump +3, but they had Biden +5 a week and a half before. Some ridiculous nonsense. Michigan, Biden +7. I mean, look, again, not a bad result if Biden wins by 2.5 points, right? But the sampling error is 2. 1,736 ballpark what ours was, which we did show Biden up by 2. Again, considering Minnesota, which we're going to go over, they did what we did. That is the exact result that we had in our final poll in Minnesota in 2020. We had Biden 52, Trump 42. And in fact, I believe it was, and I'll give you the number right now before we go over it. You're going to see it anyway. Biden 52.2, Trump 42.7. I thought that was Trump 42.2. I really did. I'm going to check that, double check that. Anyway, you can see North Carolina, Biden +1. He lost North Carolina. South Carolina, Trump plus only 7. Obviously, Trump drummed Biden in South Carolina. Pennsylvania, Biden +9. That didn't happen. That was a 1.2% race. Texas was even. Trump won it by about just under 7. Wisconsin, Biden +13 points. The other state we're going to go over today. A state that was decided by 0.6 of a percentage point. Biden +13. So, has this problem persisted? Do we have to go to Real Clear Politics right now? Because if we do, I'll show you. Or you could just take my word for it. Morning Consult was the only poll that had Democrats leading on the generic ballot. Democrat +6. Republicans won the national House vote by roughly 3 points. That's a 9-point miss. Again, I'm not doing this to pick on Morning Consult. I'm doing it to tell you when everybody on Twitter or Twatter or Xer or whatever goes berserk over a Biden +1 on a Morning Consult. Oh, thank the Lord, it's over. The swing against us is over. And then, of course, you have Trump's, what Steve calls the Keebler elves seizing on it. Oh, see, it's already reversing. Calm down. was Biden plus one a month ago. It went from Trump to Trump plus 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, and now it's back to Biden plus 1. It's going to gyrate. They are a tracking poll. But if you're Trump and you're looking at a pollster that just blew the generic ballot by 9 points, blew the national popular vote by 5 last time, blew some of these states like in Wisconsin by 13 points, and worse, you got to feel okay with it. And everybody else has got to breathe into a bag because it is not at all a bad result. YouGov patently sucks. All right. I like the guys at Morning Call. I think they're trying to do a decent job. The guys at YouGov, The Economist, read the damn publication. Yahoo News. You mean like the Yahoo News and never punish Michael Isikoff? Come on. Give me a break. So excuse me for taking my own data collection with a little bit more value than the rest of these chaps. Speaking of which, let's look at Minnesota. And did I link the old Minnesota poll? I didn't. I linked to the public polling project. I think I'm wrong here. I'm telling you, I think we overstated Biden by more. What pollster says that? What pollster says, oops, stop, I think we're wrong. It was 50.9 to 40.9. Okay, so is that correct then? Am I right to do this with Minnesota? Let me see. 50 in Minnesota and hypothetical 3, they're very close to the actual results. Oh no, I'm right. I was just reading the wrong thing. Okay. So I was concerned. It's down here. Where are you? Yeah, here it is. Okay, there it is. All right, let's pull this up. So I was concerned that we were not perhaps accurately, there it is on the screen. We were not accurately stating the old poll result from 2020. And I just wanted to make sure we were right, but we were. So we weren't identical to the Morning Consult. They had, actually, they nailed it. I mean, they had it, that's the one state they nailed really, or got very, very, very close. They did what we did, overstate Biden a little bit. We overstated his margin. We did not overstate his support. Neither did they, really. We had a 10-point spread in favor of Joe Biden. He won Minnesota by 7. But we're going to get into all of that. Bear with me. But I remember like it was yesterday, and this was not close. And I remember it significantly because in 2016, it was. We were the only pollster, if I remember correctly, to have Minnesota close. I could be wrong about that. If somebody else wants to dig it up, I'll be happy to give credit to that pollster. We had Hillary Clinton up by about 2.5 points. She won by about 2.5 points, so a little bit less, actually, if I remember correctly. So what I'm saying is, I know what it looks like when it's going to be close in Minnesota, and I know what it looks like when it's going to be a blowout. And Republicans can be blown out in this state pretty badly. Trump actually closed the gap a little bit in the final stretch, but just wasn't enough. And 7 points, it was a healthy win. Now, 7 points, Rich, it's too much. It's too much of a hurdle. Really? It's about the margin that Mitt Romney was defeated by Barack Obama in Michigan. Very, very, very close. It's about a little bit more than the margin that Barack Obama defeated Mitt Romney in Iowa. It is almost identical to the margin that George Bush beat John Kerry in Virginia in 2008. All years before that party that I just cited, who was the winner, lost that state the next cycle. So Barack Obama won Michigan by a little over 6. Beat Mitt Romney like a drum, and then Trump beat Hillary Clinton. Barack Obama beat Mitt Romney badly in Iowa, well over 6 points. 31 pivot counties. 4 years later, Donald Trump would not only beat Hillary Clinton, he would drum her. George W. Bush did not do horribly in Northern Virginia. In 2004, he did well. He beat John Kerry by 7 points. 4 years later, Barack Obama became the first Democratic president to carry the state in, I think, like It was a long time. I'd have to go back and look. I mean, I want to say it was some 40 years. I'd have to go back and look, but I want to say around 40 years, maybe even a little bit more. And then he never let it go. Republicans haven't been able to win it back ever since. Things change. So I'm saying like a 7-point swing is not that big, considering it's not, especially in the middle of a realignment. And really, it's only about a 4.5 point swing from 2016. Biden was only able to move it about 4.5 points. That's it. It's not that much. All right. So the fact that it could be close again, when all the other races are what they are, not only should this, I guess I was surprised. I was, but not only should it really not be that much of a surprise, I'm thinking we should have expected this. You know, I've had a day or two to get over it. I've had a few days to get over it. And I'm thinking we just flatly should have expected this. So who's winning? Nobody really. It's too close. Depending on the hypothetical, one has a little bit of a lead. Then you add this candidate, that third party candidate, somebody else has a little bit of a lead. The truth is, it's really, really, really close. And there are a lot of undecideds. All right. So below are the interview details from the Rust Belt poll in the North Star State. Biden, Trump, in a statistical dead heat in Minnesota, the North Star State swings significantly from 2020. Former President Donald J. Trump and President Joseph R. Biden are locked in a statistical dead heat across all hypothetical matchups, including a 3-way with a generic third party, 4-way with independent candidates Robert F. Kennedy, and a 5-way with Cornel West, as well as Green Party candidate Jill Stein. In the Minnesota Republican presidential primary, Trump leads Florida Governor Ron DeSantis 60.4 to 11%. President Biden leads Representative Dean Phillips, hometown boy, Democrat, Minnesota, 59.7 to 8.5, though a still significant 20.2% are undecided. Listen, this is a real big problem for Joe Biden. He isn't, not that he's not going to win this thing, okay? I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. When 1 out of 5 voters in what is supposed to be a blue wall, the Rust Belt blue wall, whether it's Iowa, Ohio, which, definitely lean right when Trump is on the ballot, they are red tinted. They are not, they're battlegrounds, but they're red tinted. And, when you take Trump off the ballot, it could go awry for Republicans really quickly. But they're red leaning. And it's fair to say that Minnesota and Michigan are blue leaning. All right. It doesn't mean the other candidate cannot beat the lean of that state. There's just no doubt it can happen. And whether you're talking about the red leaning or blue leaning, across the Big Six, which is what we call the Rust Belt poll we do, it's the Big Six. I mean, it's the Big Ten in that area. We call it the Big Six. Because these are the ones that matter. Like Illinois is not swinging, not yet anyway. I don't know. A couple more BLM endorsements and Trump may be on his way to Chicago. I don't know, man. I don't know. But everywhere across the Big Six, Biden has 1 in 5 voters roughly in his own party, these primary voters, who say they don't want to vote for him. I don't know. I'm undecided. I don't know. And then there are some that say someone else. The Dean Phillips, this is his strongest performing state. It's Minnesota. It's his own home state. So he's getting about 1 in 10 primary voters, still getting crushed. Don't get me wrong. But this is his best showing. He trails Marianne Williamson in most of the other states. I think the other 5, each of the other 5. I'm not saying that Phillips is going to beat Biden here. What I'm saying is when you have this kind of discontent in your base, and we know that it's worse than Trump's because we can see when we do the head-to-head, Trump's base solidifies and consolidates a lot faster than Biden's does. Contrary to what you read on Twitter, those people are statistically insignificant. I mean, I'm trying to be nice about it here, Laura. I'm not saying they don't matter. All people matter. All people's feelings matter. They just don't really matter. They are literally less than 2%. Okay? It's not just not a big deal. They have a loud voice, but at the on in an actual scientific study when, their loud voice doesn't get to drown everybody else out. Look at all the haters though, Laura. I only won 78.
Just because you have a megaphone doesn't make you more of one person. You're
Oh, it
still
was
just
awful
one
loud.
person.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. They have a megaphone, so they're on social media. Other people aren't. And they don't really, I don't want to say they don't matter, but they are not statistically significant enough to cause as much of a problem for Trump is, as Biden's base fracture is causing for him.
So statistically, they don't matter.
I mean, statistically, they're insignificant. Yes. I mean, no, seriously.
No,
Because
I
when you
know,
look at,
but it's
yeah,
just great.
they say, well, I was with Trump in 16, I was with Trump in 20, and now I'm never voting for Trump again. They're just not there. I mean, with statistics, there's always some, tiny fraction of some group that is going to do something differently than another group. That's the nature of statistics. We have people who say they're going to vote in the Democratic primary, and that they're Democrats, but then, oh, I'm voting for Trump in the general. I mean, we see it all the time. We have people who vote for Trump in the primary and then vote for Biden in the general. And it's not because they're up to some kind of really, Operation Chaos thing or something. It's just the nature of statistics. And what I'm saying is those people are not a huge group and they're not significant, literally below the sampling era. The number of people in any one of these polls, you can go into the 2020 vote, you can see who people voted for in the past, you can see what their support has been, their vote history has been, and you can look and see who really abandoned Biden, who really said they voted for Trump and now they're voting for Biden, or vice versa. The truth is, when it comes to Trump, it is insignificant. In a national poll, it's usually somewhere below 2%. It's pathetic. The last national poll, I went back and looked, it was 0.9. And it just doesn't mean much, folks. It doesn't. And Biden has this big chunk of people who just don't like him. They don't want him. It's not, they think maybe they don't want him to run again. They're not enthusiastic about voting for him. There are several who are flat mad at him, and they're just not down with it. All right. So for those who don't know the state of Minnesota, let me give a real quick rundown before we go over it. In the Northeast here, from St. Louis on, you have the Iron Range. You see Duluth right there. And I know I may be butchering some of how you guys say things, but that's St. Louis County. Under that is Carlton. That county, Trump lost by like 200 votes, less than 300 votes. I think maybe it was 300, something like that. 307 votes he lost it by. Yep. 307 votes. That's it. That's the small county below St. Louis where Duluth is. To the east of St. Louis, you have Lake St. Louis. Sorry. You have Lake. That county was also very close. It went for Biden 50.77 to 47.24. And then you have Cook, which is one of the last small northeastern Iron Range counties that really do, like in a big margin, vote for Democrats. So St. Louis even closed, and it only voted for Biden 56 to 41 or something. But Cook voted for Biden 65.94 to 31.78. So those are the four counties. Cook is right here. These are the four counties you're talking about. See that one respondent there? It's a male. It's very, very sparsely populated area, the Iron Range. It's not a lot of the vote share, but it is ancestrally and historically Democrat. Trump has made enormous gains in these areas. It is a big deal. In 2020, it didn't get a lot of fanfare, but some like 20 Democratic mayors had come out and supported Donald Trump in the Iron Range, which allowed him to take, I butcher some of these names, Laura, bad, he allowed him to take some of those, towns, those local areas. And, for instance, Lake was really close. Carlton was really close. Even St. Louis was closer than it usually is. And Biden won it by double digits, but it was still closer. And St. Louis, yeah, this is bigger. That's why you can see there are more responses there, by the way. Let's look at vote history. By the way, look at that vote history. Okay. That's a Trump or bust voter right there, even though he is 66 years old and an independent with a bachelor's degree. That is a Trump or bust voter. Right outside of Duluth, you have a female. She is 70, Polish, right? And I love asking about ethnicity. Polish Protestant. Look at her vote history. She does not always vote in midterm elections. She did in 22, but she doesn't always vote in midterm elections. And by the way, if she does, it isn't at all a sure thing that she will come out and vote for the Republican. She's more traditional, and that means she can go back and forth, All right, so here's another perfect example. The vote history is basically nil, but this is a person, registered voter, said if they did get to the polls, they would vote for Donald Trump. This matters in Minnesota. In 2018, there were a ton of working class Trump voters who did not come out, and Minnesota swung very hard against Republicans. Trump is going to need these voters to come out if he wants to have a shot at carrying Minnesota. Even though some of those results we're about to show you are more favorable than you might think, he needs them to come out. The likely voter modeling helps Joe Biden. Joe Biden, in several of the scenarios, is benefited by the likely voter model. And in two of them, it's enough for him to eke out a win, even if he performs rather poorly in some of these other areas. Now, it's possible that Trump just does so much better in the Southeast than he did in 2020, which is what happened in 16. He wound up doing better in the suburbs around the Twin City core, like Washington and Dakota, right? You have Hennepin and Ramsey that are very, very Democratic. And Trump gets killed there. He gets like a quarter of the vote. It's really ugly. All right. But in Washington and Dakota, and I'm sorry if I kill it, guys, Anoka, which is north of the Twin Cities, Trump was performing much better than anybody expected him to, and that's why they couldn't call Minnesota until basically every vote was counted. And then, of course, you have the southeastern counties like Olmsted, where he actually slipped and lost ground against Biden than he did, his performance against Hillary Clinton. And then Winona, which he lost, which was a little bit stunning to me. He lost it by about 106 votes, I believe it was, something like that. Without a doubt, it's possible that he does so much better in the Southeast. And I'm talking about from Washington to Dakota and around. If he does outperform in the Southeast, he could still eke it out without, this massive increase in working class turnout. I wouldn't want to take it's mathematically possible, but it's not likely. There are just too many votes in Hennepin, and there are too many votes in Ramsey, and you need every damn vote that supports you in Minnesota. The last time Minnesota went for Republican, folks, was in Nixon's re-election landslide. It even voted for Walter Mondale against Ronald Reagan. Mondale was a hometown guy, and it became alone with the District of Columbia to stick with the Democrat. Reagan won everything else. That's how difficult it can be to win Minnesota. Now, it has a very long history of a couple of things. One, the most important, populism. Left-wing populism, right-wing populism. And in the Trump era, with somebody like Donald Trump, he is the exact kind of candidate who can win Minnesota. And by the way, if you got a 5-point lead in Pennsylvania, even though I don't believe it, you better stay out there and campaign if it was me. But you don't have to go. If you're Trump, you don't really have to beg for votes in Ohio like other Republicans. You don't have to beg for votes in Iowa like other Republicans. You're going to win Florida by 10 points. North Carolina, you want to shore up. Arizona, you want to shore up. Georgia, you want to shore up. And then you want to stretch your legs. And you want to just back and forth whack Wisconsin and Minnesota. Whack it back and forth. Boom, 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 boom. Maybe a short trip to Maine. Boom, 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 boom. Short trip to Maine. Boom, 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 boom. Back to North Carolina. Boom, 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 boom. Arizona. Back to Minnesota. You could do that if you don't have to worry about some of the other states that, frankly, Republicans can't win. Don't listen to the BS polls like Morning Consult that says you're down in Ohio. Know you're up in Ohio because there is no way the Ohio Valley is going to abandon you, and run your ass to Minnesota. My kid's laughing. Park yourself in Rochester. Park yourself in St. Cloud. Run those margins up. Box them in Ramsey and Hennepin. Washington, Dakota. Washington, Dakota. Little trip to St. Cloud. This is why they want Trump in a courthouse instead of on the campaign trail. Look at St. Cloud. Look at it. Let's zoom in. In fact, look in and around. This is what we call the Twin Cities core. Hennepin and Ramsey. Look at that. This is a guy who got 20-something% of the vote in Hennepin. 22, something like that. It was ridiculous. Blown out. And Ramsey got 26, and he got 27 in Hennepin. It's doable. Olmsted, the performance in and around Olmsted, to me, was very impressive. Minnesota, in my experience, until the final end, polls very low. It did in 16. It was like 42-40, 42-40. I'm talking about in September. And they start to early vote early. And then eventually it ticks up, ticks up, ticks up, ticks up. And the last one was like 46-44. I'd have to go and look. And there, that leads me to the other thing. It also has a very long history of supporting third-party candidates with larger than normal vote shares. Here's good news for Trump. It is a high participation state. Minnesota is one of the highest voter turnout states in the country. It always has been. These people vote bigly. All right, so let's get in here. Joe Biden and Donald Trump are locked in a statistical dead heat across all hypotheticals in the blue-leaning battleground state of Minnesota, according to the North Star state poll for November 2023. Survey was conducted by Big Data Poll less than 1 year out as part of the Rust Belt poll in the Big Six. That includes Iowa, Ohio, Michigan, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. The press release for Wisconsin will be out when I'm done here. Worth noting, voters who participated in the 2020 presidential election told Big Data Poll they voted for Biden, 52.2 to 42.7. That is very close to the actual result of 52.6 to 45.4 in Minnesota. Very close. These samples were extremely representative. Our weighting efficiency is very high. In a hypothetical three-way matchup with a generic third-party candidate, Mr. Biden only leads slightly with this group, 2020 voters, by 1.5%. That's it. A group he won by 7 points. It is now, within the sampling era, 1.5%. However, among non-2020 voters, Trump leads by a much larger 18.6% margin, though the group is still largely undecided. The final North Star state poll released just days before the 2020 U.S. presidential election by Big Data Poll found Mr. Biden leading by Trump by 10 points, 50.9 to 40.9. It was conducted as part of the election 2020 public polling project. Let me just put this out there real quick about that non-2020 voter. This is what Susan Page and David Peliogos over at USA Today, they wrote like a combined 5-6 columns about this. That's what they're talking about. That's what and let's be honest, they're Democrats. They're hyperventilating over it. What they're concerned about is that with that non-2020 vote, with that unlikely vote, Trump has these really big leads, but you have like 30% who say they're undecided. So what do I mean? So Trump will be like ahead, like 40-12 or something. Or 36-11, or maybe ballpark. Like I'm, just giving you guys numbers. And then the vast majority say they would not vote or they're undecided. And not vast majority, the rest of them will say they're undecided. Some of them will say they won't vote, and others may choose some third party or something like that. What Susan Page and David are talking about, though, is that in most instances, and they've been doing that poll for years, and this is true. I mean, I would totally agree with this. Most cases, when they don't pick one of the two-party candidates, they don't vote. So then it just doesn't turn into Trump has a 18.6% lead and he's leading, like 40-12. It turns into Trump is like blew you out with these voters, like 70-30 or 65-35, because those other people just end up not voting. Many of the people who say they're going to pick a third party, they don't actually do that. Only a fraction of them do. And then they wind up, in many cases, either not voting or they break in a similar margin the way that the other group was going anyway. And then, of course, you have those who say they're undecided. They're going to do the same thing. They're either going to break like the rest of the group or they're not going to vote. And what they're hyperventilating over is if those people come out and that happens, then it's not just, oh, well, then it means Trump's going to win that state or that he's going to win the race overall, because they're talking about national numbers. No, it's the difference between we're going home. It's early. And it's an unexpected strong result for one of the candidates. That's what happened to Mitt Romney when he ran against Barack Obama. They didn't see those people at all. And then Mitt Romney, being the technocrat, plutocrat that he is, he missed. He couldn't get turnout and he missed. I keep saying miss because like the case of the missing white voter in 2012. It's like 4 million white voters who just said, the hell with Mitt Romney. I'm not coming out. He's a scumbag. I'm not voting for that. Not you, John Barack Obama anymore, but that guy's trash. I'm not voting for him. And they just stayed home. And then Barack Obama won the unlikely voter by the way, similar margins that we're seeing for Trump right now. And he didn't care if he lost independents, frankly, because he ran it up to a D+5 electorate. All right, here's important. Goes to exactly what I'm saying. Among registered voters who were also given a generic third-party option, Trump led Biden by roughly a point, 38-37, with 12.4 choosing a generic third party and 10.4 saying they're undecided. But among likely voters, the two were essentially tied at 39, with a generic third party option taking just 12.7 at that point, and 8.9% remaining undecided. Or excuse me, should say roughly the same, took a generic third, it went up 0.3 of a percentage point, and only 8.9 were undecided. So Biden benefits from the lower turnout model from likely voters. Only 0.8 said that they would not vote. Minnesota is, I'm telling you, it's a turnout state. Minnesota has a long history of third-party candidates achieving ballot access, as does several other states in the Big Six we surveyed for this study. In 2020, there were a total of 9 candidates on the ballot for president in Minnesota, folks. However, this time, it's far less clear whether it's hurting President Biden or President Trump. In the hypothetical matchup that includes independent candidate Robert Kennedy, Biden leads by less than a point. Insignificant. 35.3 to 34.9. RFK takes 9%. 8% goes to another generic third-party candidate. With Jill Stein and Cornel West on the ballot as well as Kennedy, Trump leads Biden 36 to 35, basically, if I'm rounding. And it's 36.1 to 34.6. 8.4% go to RFK, 2.1 go to Ms. Stein, and 1.9 go for Mr. West. Presidential nominations, the former president holds a massive 48.3-point lead over the 2024 Republican primary field for the nomination at 60.4%. Governor DeSantis and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley are way behind, 11 and 7 respectively. No other candidate breaks 5%, not even Vivek. He's below 5. Only 0.6 chose someone else, and 11.6 remained undecided. On the Democratic side, Biden is dominating the field too over hometown hero Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson, 59.7 to 8.5 and 2.5 respectively. However, 9% chose someone else, and another significant 20.2 said they're still undecided. President Biden is far ahead, folks, all across the big six. But we did see in every single state a lack of firmness in his support, with large numbers of his own party choosing someone other than him. This should be very concerning for Democrats less than a year out from the general election. And I do really quick, let me make sure I got the North Star State. I do really quick want to take a look at the crosstabs, and because we have time, and then we'll go to Wisconsin. If we do have time, I want to talk about, and I was kind of saving this until we were done with all the polling. I want to talk about who is the favorite for 2024 right now. All right. So, and by the way, Sean Trendy had wrote an article about it. I thought was interesting. For once in a long time, Sean hasn't let his TDS get in his way of legit analysis. And I include the caveats that he put in his article. I would have included the same caveats. Things can change. This can happen. That can happen. The fact of the matter is, the fact that, well, we'll wait for that. I want you to take notice of the 18 to 29 vote, okay, with a few things when you have time to go over yourself. What I'm going to show you right now, they are still largely outside of the presidential race. They are still largely Democratic voters. It's almost a 20-point margin that they favor voting in the Democratic primary over the Republican primary, even though there's a sitting incumbent. They usually don't get turnout. Trump did before COVID. It was historic. If we were to ask the generic ballot, I imagine we would see roughly this margin, 53 to 37, going for the Democrat. However, there is most definitely something going on when it comes to the presidential race. I think we can all now stop with the scam that the vote shift among young voters and non-white voters is not real. It is real across every single battleground state that we tested. It is real across national polling across the country and different pollsters from the left to the right. It is not just that Biden has fallen and collapsed. He has. And that certainly is part of what's going on here and part of the equation. But this early out, a year out, in many of these groups, in many of these regions, in many of these areas, Trump is already where he either needs to be or where he was in 2020. Biden's not going to get every single undecided. He needs to change minds back to him. He needs the economy to improve dramatically. He needs the wars around the world to stop. He needs inflation to stop eating into everyone's wages. And he's not going to do it with BS from the BLS. All right? The Bureau of Labor Statistics are not going to fudge their way out of this one like they did for Barack Obama against Mitt Romney. The Bureau of Economic Analysis hid data from you on real personal income for years until Trump took office. It's not going to work this time. Frankly, it didn't work in 2016. They tried to hide massive revisions for a long time, a year into Trump presidency. And Americans didn't buy it. So I'm talking about reality has to be seeping in, not fake mess. You cannot tell someone that our data says your life is getting better if their life really isn't getting better. You know, turkey costs a lot less this year. Congratulations, Joe Biden. Turkey went up 230% since your presidency or whatever the hell it was. But because it backed off 7%, turkey's now only 223% higher. So congratulations, you lowered the cost of turkey. That's not going to work. And yes, that was exaggeration, but you know what I mean. Oh, gas has fallen. Great. It's only 2.5 times the amount it was when Trump left. not 4 times. Everyone give him a round of applause. And young people are hurting, man. They're hurting. Student loans just kicked back in effect a couple months ago. They're hurting. And you know, the narrative crap is just not going to work. It's not. Take a look at the voter model here. Obviously, older people are more likely to vote. Men are slightly more likely in Minnesota to vote than women. However, you have to watch the likely to vote with a greater than 50% or equal to or greater than 50% likelihood of women going out to vote, because you know what we found? They do vote. Women are typically, not always, but typically more likely to say likely instead of certain. Men will say certain. If something is going on with men, it'll pop immediately out at you. If they're depressed or something like that, it will jump right out because you'll see that. However, there were more women, twice as many women who said they were certain not to vote. So the electorate, if this was a likely voter model, could be slightly more male. However, it would still be more educated, which is why Biden benefits from it a little bit. All right. So, you know, across all things here, you know, you blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of black voters for the first time who say, I think I'm going to vote in the Republican primary. That's interesting. Slight advantage for independents, although it is closed. So that's why our screen, you can see that obviously primary voting sample is lower than the overall sample. You just don't split it in half because there has to be eligibility requirements met. Every state is a little bit different. So, you know, it is what it is. So there it is. America First Republicans are much more likely to say they're going to vote than traditional Republicans. They're much more amped up. Conservatives and liberals are roughly equal. Liberals are 87% certain. Conservatives are 85% certain. Moderates are only about 74, which is still rather high. Right now in Minnesota, it's looking like a roughly close to 2020 turnout. Close. Not quite there, even though right now, I think it's fair to say that the certainty to vote number is much higher. That likely is bloated, and we'll see if that holds or not. Okay. I don't know that it will. I suspect most of them probably will vote, but that's why we tighten the screen as time goes on. Hope we're casting a really big net right now and hoping we don't exclude anybody down the road. Because if turnout winds up exceeding 2020, I'm not going to be the only pollster who missed it. You know, I'll tell you what I'd like to be, the only pollster who called it. That's what I'd like to be. Yeah, richer people are more likely to vote. No shocker there. People who are employed and retired, more likely to vote. No shocker there. All right, let's get into the crux of this here. And first, let's take a look at approval. Biden's approval is about 41%. All right, 41.4. Not miserable as Ohio, for instance, but not great. And his disapproval is very, very, very high. 41.2% versus only his strong disapproval, against 16.9 who strongly approve. That somewhat approve is how Democrats did better, somewhat disapprove is how Democrats did better than expected in a lot of these areas, along with turnout. Their turnout game was better. But I think it's safe to say Republicans didn't win. Somewhat disapproves. And Trump is performing better with them than Republicans did. He's not even himself. He's not winning them everywhere, but he is doing better than Republicans did do. And you can see that here. Okay. So you can see that he's obviously crushing it with a strong 85% of his voter are people who strongly disapprove. Another 10% of his vote is made up of those who somewhat disapprove. Okay. However, Biden's holding his own. I mean, it doesn't look great, of course, only 6%, but that's not terrible. He's holding his own. And third party voters obviously are Problem for Joe Biden is that somewhat approve. He's going to need like everybody who somewhat approves of him. He loses some to Trump already, and then he loses a lot to third party. And the rest, you got about a third of them that are undecided are people who say that this is why the likely voter helps Biden. Okay. 31% of those who are undecided somewhat approve of Joe Biden. He's winning nearly 50% of this group. So if we were to allocate them, he'd get a large chunk of that. He would. However, the somewhat disapprove is going to favor Trump. That was not the case in 2022 when we would cross, like I'm crossing right now, doing cross tabulation between approves and vote preference. Democrats won them, not by a lot, but they were winning them. Biden is not here. Trump is. So a lot of that allocated, at least a quarter of it is going to favor Trump. And then, of course, there are still 20% of the undecided groups who strongly disapprove of the job Joe Biden's doing, and 85% roughly of them are going to Trump. So it benefits Biden just a hair. Just a hair. Let's look also at party real quick. All right, so here we go. You have about 8% of Republicans, 8.6, who still approve of the job that Joe Biden is doing. However, you have about 15% of Democrats who disapprove. Independents, about 64% of independents either somewhat or strongly disapprove of the job Joe Biden's doing. He's only at 28.7% approval among independents in the North Star state. Guys, that is bad. Bad. As a matter of fact, if I went and looked, let's see what the approval was for Trump back then with independents. Here's Trump's approval. Let me go to independents. Okay. In the North Star state in 2020, in our final poll, we had Biden up by 10. Still, 14.6% of independents and other voters said they strongly approve of the job that Donald Trump was doing as president. That now compares to 5.1% for Joe Biden. And another 18.7% said that they somewhat approve of the job that Donald Trump was doing. So a combined approval rating of about a third, which is bad, from independents. Biden's not even that high. 23.6% somewhat approve compared to 18.7% instead of that of Trump. And Trump at least had 15% strongly approved from independents. Biden only has a third of that. It's very bad. And it's important to note, we're talking about Minnesota. This isn't Pennsylvania. This isn't Wisconsin or Michigan. Forget about Iowa, Ohio. This is Minnesota. Democrats are a little bit more of this sample than Republicans. 2020, I believe, was even, I think, or D+1. Maybe. Let me see. It's a good question. For posterity here. Come on, load up. I should have been there anyway because I want to show you by region in a little bit. It was D+1. Democrat 35, Republicans 34, Independents 31. We are basically, if you're looking at it right now, just doing some crude math, that's about what we are. Very close. Very, very close. And again, everyone has a different opinion on waiting for party. I think if you wait for everything else, you shouldn't really have to touch party. If you wait for everything else correctly and you have a representative sample, party changes. Party is fluid, especially self-identification. If you wait for it, then how the hell are you ever going to know when the electorate swings differently? Minnesota was like D+3 or something or more than that in 2016. So how would you know it was going to be roughly even if you were polling 2020 and you were waiting for party? You would have made it too democratic of an electorate. You understand what I'm saying, guys? You have to let the electorate kind of tell you what it is. All right. The Republican presidential nomination, we went over this. I'm just going to go over it real quick briefly. We could do it by, for instance, area, since this is an area where Trump is supposedly so weak in the suburbs in Minnesota. Here, he's winning urban areas, 64% of urban areas. DeSantis and Nikki Haley could potentially lose the Twin City core to Vivek. Some of those suburbs around the Twin City core, DeSantis would wind up coming in around second. Haley would take some of them as well. All right, but he's crushing it in the rural areas. He's winning the burbs by less than he's winning the rural and urban. But again, once more, you can see that Trump is putting together a urban-rural coalition. It's very, very interesting. Very interesting. There aren't that many evangelicals in Minnesota, but as you can see, among those who are Protestants, Trump is obviously winning them by a lot, 60%. DeSantis does better than he does overall, and among evangelicals, he does like few points better, but not enough. He's getting killed. By region, this is the Twin Cities core right there. You can see it. 64.3%. A lot of votes. Even in a Republican primary in Minnesota, there are a lot of votes in that area. Of course, the rest of the state will make up, and you can see there is the rural-urban coalition. 63.1 in the rest of the state, 64.3 in the Twin City core, and in the eastern Twin City suburbs, 43%, which is his weakest, but 23% are undecided. So are we really supposed to believe that when this 23% breaks, there's somehow 7% of it's not going to push Trump over? Come on. I don't buy that. I just don't. Can like Nikki Haley win a suburb area? Of course. But folks, I don't see it. And in case you're not up on the rules, go check out the Republican rules in Minnesota. It's, when we talk about delegate allocation, what this means, it's not like Democrats. That's a delegate bloodbath. There's Joe Biden, as you can see. He is doing well in the Twin City core. I'm not surprised that in the eastern Twin City burbs, Dean Phillips has got his greatest support level. That doesn't surprise me at all. It really doesn't. Now, in the rest of the state, Biden is also taking close to 60, so there you have it. Let's look at who can be persuaded and who can't by party. Let's start with the Republican. I'm trying to go through. We're at 104 already. I want to get to Wisconsin. 65% of Trump voters cannot be persuaded to change their mind. Again, that is 2/3 of 60%. Cannot be persuaded. 2/3 of 60%. Only a quarter of Ron DeSantis' supporters are unmovable. Less than 20% is the case for Nikki Haley. 23.6%, small sample sizes. I mean, it's not even worth getting into. Let's talk about the Democrats. Interesting here. Only half of Joe Biden's supporters are not not persuadable, cannot be persuaded to change their mind. So again, if you don't understand how significant it is, when we look at Trump's unmovable number, understand that the sitting president is at roughly 50-50. Dean Phillips, he's got some core support there. It's even more than Ron DeSantis does, and Nikki Haley, frankly. But again, small samples. Let's look at Biden v. Trump, and let's see, what are we going to do here? First, let's look at party. Let's look by party first, okay? So Trump is taking nearly twice as many Democrats from Biden that Biden is taking Republicans from him. That is the opposite of what happened in 2020. And just to give you an idea of that, 4% of Democrats voted for Donald Trump. In Minnesota, 8% of Republicans voted for Joe Biden. So Biden took twice as many Republicans last time that as Trump took Democrats. And then independents, Trump is winning by a few points. A large 1 in 5 go to a third-party candidate, but Trump is winning them by about 6 right now. He lost them by 15. He lost them by 15 in 2020. All right, so what else? Biden is just clobbering Trump with advanced postgrads. Look at that. I know it's not a huge sample, and I know a lot of them still are undecided, but holy crap. 72-10. You're reading that correctly. The 4-year grad, Trump is going to have to either close or he's going to have to romp Joe Biden by a larger margin with those who have some college or an associate degree. Because if I give you the margins for 2020, I can tell you Trump only, well, that's why he is doing a lot better with that group. If they had some college, Biden won them by 8. If they did complete a 2-year degree, Trump won them by 6. That group combined right now is voting for Trump by nearly 20 points. So that's a major turn. Major turn. Trump did win never attended college, however, by 30. He will obviously have to. Oh, he's almost there, actually. He's at 20. He's at 27. So he's almost, actually, that is better for him than I thought. Excuse me. It's just that Biden is winning advanced degrees. It's a small sample size. It's possible. Sampling errors for subgroups are higher, but Biden already is 2 points higher than what he won with advanced degrees in 2020. Trump is just getting clobbered with them. I mean, he's running 19 points behind where he did in 2020. That's bad. But here's the shtick, okay? Here's the kicker. They can be more of the electorate in Minnesota than in other states. That's true. I think they're about 18% here. No, they're less. Sorry. They've been low in some other, I think at 16, they were like 12 or something. So there were a lot of post-grads in the electorate in Minnesota in 2020. But the biggest group is still, without a doubt, the some college and associate. If you combine them, they were nearly 40% of the electorate in 2020. It's just that they were fairly close. Biden won those who hadn't completed a 2-year degree and had some college. Trump won those who did complete a 2-year degree. Combined, Trump barely edged Biden out. Few points. It is now a 20-point lead for Trump. And if he holds on to that 10% as they break those undecideds, he can do it. Because notice let's just talk about raw numbers. And I know they're small numbers, but it'll give you an idea. That 11% of postgrads that are still undecided, that's 14 votes. Okay? It's actually smaller than the 17% of 4-year graduates, or the 7.5% of 4-year graduates, slightly smaller of a group. Look at the some college and associate combined being nearly 40% of the total electorate. Only 10% undecided for them is 2.5 to 1 over postgrads. And then that doesn't even take into account the high school or less at all, which will break for Trump. Will. So, it's a freaking close race. We're talking about a 1-point race. In the future, we will. It is very dubious to not show people who's undecided, who would, a lot of these polls out there, like Marquette and others, Fox does not, and I applaud them for this. They're not showing you the undecided vote. So when they come out and they're like, 51 Biden, 49 Trump, they've removed the undecided votes and they call it allocation. All right. That is not, I don't like that. Now, if you're going to allocate based on the vote totals already, what you know about this group. So take these 24 people and allocate them according to these prior percentages. Fine. Say you're doing it, but fine. We could do rebasing and stuff like that with those who would not vote. I just don't like the idea of removing these altogether and then just like pretending they don't exist. And a lot of pollsters do that. CBS News does it. I don't like it. Allocation's one thing. Just poof, gone is not good enough. So again, when you look at who is decided and who's not, head to head, Trump looks a little bit stronger. Unless you're going to throw everyone on that ballot, which in Minnesota they may do. But once you add Kennedy, it hurts Trump. You can now see Biden takes a tiny little lead. Why? He's still winning high school or less by 22%. But he's not winning that some college and associates by 20% anymore, is he? No. He's lost a couple of points. Biden holds his advanced and post-grad lead over Trump almost to the T. Where is Kennedy pulling almost all of his, not almost all, but the majority of his votes come from? Where? Some college and associate degree. And let me just zoom in here, guys. So I know you guys can't really see that well. You can see it's 12.5% out of some college and associate. That is most of his vote. Combined, it's actually not even as much as this. So it is the majority of his vote. All right. So it's funny because like the high school and less largely stick with Trump. I mean, he loses some to Kennedy, but it really hurts here because it's such a big group. All right. So then when you add back Kennedy, Stein, West, or not add back, but you also add Kennedy, Stein to the ballot with Kennedy, then Trump retakes a slight lead. He's crushing it with high school or less. It's not quite the 20-point lead with some college and associates, but it's just under again. The 4-year degree gets closer. Biden only is winning them by 5, and the advanced post-grad remains again a 71-10 bloodbath. So it goes to, let me just pause for a second and read through some comments, make sure everyone seems to, really understand what I'm saying. Jonathan says, can I put this up, Jonathan? We're not mocking anyone who's got a master's or advanced degree, but kind of we are. I don't know. We're not, but he said advanced degree equals professional, useless people. And that's why I like to call them credentialed. All right. For and KC said the most credentialed don't care about the inflation rate. That's absolutely true. Yep. Yeah, I mean, Dan, Trump is up 1 point here in Minnesota. It depends how the ballot is. The full ballot, Trump is up a point. Biden takes the lead when it's just Kennedy on the ballot. All right, so just for people who are just joining now, it's very, very, very close. Very close. And with those undecideds, you got to like being Trump with the full ballot. You do. You have to I would rather be Trump than Biden if all these people get on this ballot. I would. Because, you're going to look, Biden's taking 11 to 12 out of the 15 that are undecided here, representing 12.2%. He is. That's going to happen. They're not going to break. The 4-year grad gets a little bit murky, and it's the biggest by one stinking vote. The biggest 4-year remaining on the table. So, you don't want to, if you're Trump, you don't want that to break too hard against you and get out of hand. You're pretty happy that Kennedy is there pulling 6.7. And Jill Stein, by the way, is pulling a point here. West pull a point here. Some college and associate, which is the second largest undecided group, that's going to benefit Trump. He's going to win them. Let me just do some quick math in my head. He's going to take, actually, the hell with my head, right? What is it? 4.1. He's going to take 15 of them at least. All right. So Biden will get, 10? I'm ballparking it. Sorry. 9.1. Not bad. So Biden's getting 9 of these responses. Trump's getting 15. Man, it's going to be close. It would be that the high school or less would bail Trump out of that because, I think so. I'd rather be Trump. By a hair, I'd rather be Trump because Biden's not going to win those 4-year college grads by enough, but he will gain on Trump. It would end up being like 37.5 to 37.1 or 2. It would be really, really close. Really close. Let me see what Trump's going to gather out of that. Yeah, Trump would take 13 out of the 30 remaining if it was allocated based on this. He could win more. I'm just saying, based on we're seeing right now. Bad problem that Trump and others have is that, that large would not vote. is mostly high school. And that's true in most of the states and in most cases. Okay. High school or less. They are more unlikely voters. This is why Republicans always used to pray for low turnout and why Democrats used to pray for high turnout. This is exactly why. And now the roles are reversed. By the way, the Koch brother endorsement the other day goes to this. The Koch brothers endorsed the Koch brother group, because one I believe is dead, but the Koch family runs Americans for prosperity. You may even be living in a battleground state or an early primary or an important primary state or something, and you have seen these ads. I've seen them in Florida. I've seen them in North Carolina. And what they've been running. It's an ad that says, don't nominate Donald Trump. And by the way, they've been running these ads for months. Not just now that they endorse someone other than Trump. They've been running against Trump. They just didn't back a specific horse. All right. But they were running ads that basically said, vote against Donald Trump because if he's our nominee, Democrats are going to vote in much higher rates. Trump is the reason Democrats vote a lot. If we nominate someone other than Donald Trump, we can beat them. That is the weakest, least inspiring, most pathetic message I have ever heard. And let's be honest. Who are they talking about? Even though they may be wrong, because they're always wrong. They're stupid, rich, white people, and they don't know what they're talking about. Who are they really talking about? What are they really saying with that message? Because of course they think that Black people and Hispanic people hate Donald Trump. So what they're really saying is, we all know that white educated voters vote. And now that they're more democratic, they're always going to vote. It doesn't matter. What they're really saying is, nominate someone other than Donald Trump and less white people will vote. I mean, less non-white people will vote. Don't inspire the Black and brown voter to come out and vote by nominating Donald Trump. That's what they're saying, Laura. Am I wrong? That's what they're saying. Because everybody knows the white educated voter votes no matter what now. Always has. They used to be more Republican, and that's why it benefited Republicans to have a likely voter model. Frankly, I find that offensive. I'm not kidding. I'm like, I saw that. Has anyone seen there? Norm says, I've seen him here in Montana. It sounds like commie crap. It's absolutely horrible. Norm knows it. He's seen it. Has anyone else seen it? Because I mean, these are unbelievably terrible. They knocked on Will's door. I'm reading that on Locals. This is what they are running. Terrible. That's your message. No wonder why the leader, co-founder in Rhode Island, the Rhode Island chapter of BLM comes out and says, yeah, I'm endorsing Donald Trump for president. Not Republicans, just Donald Trump. Oh, people don't know, huh? Oh, man, for real? Oh, I got to show this clip. Hold up. Pause. We got to show this clip. I need a break anyway. I need some water and a vape. By the way, don't forget about our friends at jamandbean.com. They have a great thing going right now. The link is in the description. Use the promo code TPP40 on a subscription, a new subscription to coffee or some delicious gourmet popcorn, and that'll get you 40% off right off the rip. But every month when it renews, you'll still get 10% off. All right, so check out the link in the description below. Plus, those wellness kits, I'll tell you right now, those are one of the best things that ever happened to my family. Patriot Supply, for Patriots, excuse me. I tell you what, I like the idea of having all that stuff on hand, not needing to go rush out and see a doctor in the event of an emergency. Already handled it with one. It's fantastic. It's well worth it to me. Well worth it to me. Plus, can't always count on certain supposed competitors that really are adversaries and enemies, making sure the supply lines stay open for you. But all that's in the description. Let's listen right now to this. It's not that long. Give me a little couple minutes of a break, and you will absolutely have it. If you haven't seen this, then you're in for somewhat of a laugh. Mark Fisher is not one of the crazy, well, I don't want to say it, but you know that people were tied up in BLM scandals. All right, Mansions taking the, that's not him. So can't say I'm surprised. I just think it's huge. Can we stop pretending now? Like sampling errors for subgroups are higher. In Minnesota, we found the highest support for Donald Trump among black voters, damn near 30%. It's crazy. I know I would not expect him to end up there, but I also expect him to do better with whites. But sampling errors for subgroups are higher. If we talk to more, I imagine it would come down, but it's nothing. In Ohio, it was 17%. In Pennsylvania, it was like 22%. The New York Times found the same thing. Can we get over this now? Can we stop pretending like it's not real? It's real. Let's rock it. And I'll be right back after our quick little break.
Hey, because it identifies with what I've seen in the barbershop. All the brothers, for some reason right now, are turning tides right now. And I just wonder, what is the big reason?
I think personally, it's the duplicity of the Democrats, the hypocrisy. We're not stupid. The brothers are not stupid. We understand when someone's for us and when someone is not. And it's obvious that the Democratic Party is not for us.
Yeah, I can't.
Their policies actually strike at the heart of the black family and the nuclear family.
Yeah, so, you were part of Black Lives Matter. You founded it there. And now you're saying, you're not saying the entire Republican Party. You're saying Donald Trump. So what is it about Donald Trump? Is it the economics? You noted the black family. What is it going to take for him to shore up this support amongst black voters?
Well, I just think that it's going to take information. A lot of people are misinformed. They don't really understand because they don't educate themselves on Donald Trump as a person and his history. But if they do that, and it's going to take, leaders, educated leaders getting the word out there, I think that it'll happen on its own and it'll be organic because personally, I love the man. I mean, how could you not if a real man, how could you not relate to someone like that?
Yeah, he watches every morning, so I'm sure he's cheering as you're saying this. We looked at some of the polls for Trump over Biden in the battleground states. In 2020, it was 8%. Now in 2023, he has 22%. And that's just not black men. So the election is right around the corner. If you had the opportunity to talk to the former president, I'm sure he's watching right now, what would you tell him?
Call me on my cell phone, man. I'll stop for Trump.
Mark, I'm fascinated by you. Why did you end up leaving Black Lives Matter? Or are you still affiliated with it?
No. I'm still affiliated with it. All day because.
And that's it. That's like I have to pause my own break. I'm supposed to be drinking water and whatnot, but that's it. That's he's still affiliated with Black Lives Matter. They were talking about the brothers in the barbershop. I know exactly what he's talking about. I've seen it firsthand. I've talked to I've talked to them every day. I mean, this is for sure real, but the fact that he is still part of BLM lends him credibility. He's not somebody who's been ostracized. There have been other leaders in the past, including a former head of the NAACP, but they were formally associated with that and were kind of like pariahs within that community. He is not. So it's a big deal. It is.
The thing about it is my message that I preach and that I tout is unity. It's a message of unity. It's unity driven. I want to bring together all the marginalized groups from the margins and bring them to the center because we're stronger together as a one nation indivisible under God.
Yeah. Mark Fisher, I think all Americans can go with a message of unity. We thank you so much for coming on the program. I hope you'll come back and check in with us.
I appreciate you. Keep it good.
All right, let me just end it there and say that what he just said is the most dangerous thing to the political class, which is, Lord, just message me. The most dangerous thing to the political class, which is that once everyone that's marginalized or persecuted, not a member of the ruling class, once they all realize together that the other is not the source of their problems, that the other is not the one who hates them and puts them down and rigs the system against them. Once they realize that the other is not taking their slice of the pie, it's that the ruling class is deciding who gets to have pie, right? And let alone how big that slice is. And once they all realize that they are actually together in it against them, the ruling class, that's when it's the end of the line for the ruling class. And that's why they are absolutely terrified of stuff like this happening. Yeah, okay, honey, that's fine. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just saw her message. All right, so yeah, Laura wanted me to show you the truth, Paul. No, that's a bad truth. I lost. I mean, I did. I won it, but only 77%. Laura's so funny. She's like, "Who's the best pollster ever?" And put up this truth poll, and a lot of people voted. I won about 80%, a little under 80%. And then she mocked, the rest of them. And it was funny stuff. But trolls, there are trolls. You know what I mean? And then actually some people told me they voted, but they didn't realize what she was doing or what she was saying, and they voted wrong. But you know what? I don't want to recount. All right. I still won overwhelmingly. So thank you for that. But here she comes. She comes.
It was so funny. It was a joke, and someone's like, "I don't get it." I'm like,
I saw that person too. Yeah.
It's like, you're special.
Okay, special. But yeah, so that was fun. That was interesting. I should have won 97% of that puppy though. Come on, guys. One more thing I want to show you about Minnesota before we move on real quick to Wisconsin, which I'll give you guys a sneak preview of. The PR is not out for it yet, but I will show it to you nonetheless. It may change a hair, but I don't know. I honestly, I'm tempted to say I don't think so, because Milwaukee, for instance, it is usually like 15 or 16% of the vote. In the poll, it's more than that. I think it's like 18 or something, 19 maybe even. Everything else looks perfect. Even the prior vote history, everything is perfect. And we're talking about such a small little rake. I don't want to do it. I really don't know. I'm going to do it and see what it does, and then I'll decide whether or not that's accurate or not. That's part, polling really is, part art and part science. That's true. It looks a little bit too liberal. But ideologically, it doesn't look too liberal. Regionally, it looks too liberal. Everything else looks right. I don't know. So I'm a little bit torn. It wouldn't change it a lot anyway. But it may change it, quarter percentage here, quarter percentage there. And me, that crap matters to me. So we'll see. All right. So let me just show you the last of what I want to show you with Minnesota. All right. So here we have Trump in the Twin City core already doing as well as he did in 2020. And that is a big deal. All right. He won 27% of the Twin City core vote before. In the exit polls, it showed it at 27%. He won 27% in Hennepin, 27.4%. And in neighboring Ramsey, he won 26.2. So very, 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 very much. Overall, he won 27%, and we're there already. And as you can see, it's a fairly large sample. So Trump is already hitting his targets in urban areas. Again, this is what we're seeing everywhere. He's either just below them with plenty of undecideds that are favorable to him that will make him hit that target, or even exceed them in several of the polls where he's just under. He's still within a position to exceed what he did in 2020. That's what I need you to understand. Minnesota's a great example of this. He will exceed his vote share in the Twin City core. If the vote was held right now, he would exceed his margins in both Ramsey and Hennepin. That is a lot. There, a lot of votes, folks. A lot of votes. For those who don't know how many votes there are over 750 100,000 votes cast in Hennepin alone. In Ramsey, it was just under 300,000. So you do better in Hennepin by 5 points. You're talking about a lot of votes. But let me tell you what also it means, okay? Because you have a lot of educated white voters within the Twin City cores, and then you have non-white voters. And he is doing better with non-white voters, so that's going to help, obviously, as well. But if you're doing that much better in the Twin City core, you're going to do better, likely, in the suburbs. Washington County, he won 44.4%. Dakota County, he won 42%. There were over 250,000 votes cast in Dakota County. There were almost 170,000 cast in Washington County. So if you're going to do better in the core, you're going to do better in the burbs. He lost the burbs for all the talk. You hear about the burbs, the burbs, the burbs, the burbs. He lost the eastern Twin City suburbs by only 2 points combined. That's it. Now he's up by 4. And then, of course, in the rest of the state, he's winning by like 20 points. And that's ballpark what he won the rest of the state by in 2020. So again, hitting his target in even the rural areas. This is an astonishing result. It truly is. All right. So for as low as these vote shares are, even when you add a third party, yet he's still doing that. Winning men by 8, losing women by 4. Minnesota is a state like Wisconsin. Wisconsin can be a 50-50 state in a presidential election. Minnesota, I'll give it to you right now. It was actually in 2020, it was less male. In 2016, it was almost split. But in 2020, it was 46 male, 54 female. But he lost females by 17 points and only won men by 3. So you can see the major difference going on right now. All right. All right. So go check that out. Go look at the map. Go click around the map. Check out what the interviews tell us. Very, very interesting. We have half an hour here. I would like to sneak peek or sneak preview peek before we put out the press release. Hey, little buddy. My little man's running in. Can I get a kiss from him, actually? You guys mind? Can Daddy have a kiss? Can Daddy have a kiss? Oh, you make Daddy feel so special. Deuces. Deuces. Love that kid. Love that kid. Love all my kids. Yeah, you know, you really, it's what it's all about. It is. It's what it's all about, folks. I'm getting myself off the screen. No emotional screen appearances. Okay? Get some coffee. All right. Wisconsin also tends to be a fairly high turnout state. There is something to be said about men and their voting patterns in the state of Wisconsin versus women. In 2020, for instance, men were half of the electorate. All right. And that was true as well. I believe men were 51% in 2021. Trump won men by 10 in Wisconsin. He lost women by 13. That's why it was so damn close. The electorate in Wisconsin was R plus 5 in 2020. It was even roughly in I want to say in 2022. But before I even do that, goes to show you how much Wisconsin has swung. It was D plus 1 back in 16. All right. Trump won independents 50-40. And he won how much? I think Democrats won area where Democrats kind of held on for Hillary. Yeah, they did. So Trump won 7% of Democrats. She won 6% of Republicans, but he won independents by 10. Very similar to what we're seeing right now. Only it's more Republican than it was back then. And just to give you an idea, that's region. So we separated out Milwaukee and Dane this time. If you remember our polling back in 2020, again, we were mirroring the Edison exit polls on purpose and their regional definitions. Okay, so everybody's on the same page. In 2020, they changed their exit poll definitions. And to me, it was kind of stupid. They did Milwaukee County, which they always did. But then they went with Chilwaukee suburbs, 22%. Dane County separate, 10%. Fox River Valley, North Lakeshore, for those who don't know, that's runs up against like Kenosha to, I want to say, give me 1 second. I'm those. Ran from Kenosha to, it goes up to Waukesha. It goes through Racine, through Kenosha, through Racine, and then ends around Waukesha. So it's very unclear what it means specifically, especially since you want to think it's just like the Southeast. That's all it is. I mean, they're just making up a different regional definition for the Southeast, which is what they used to have. However, the Southeast and their old regional exit polls were counties that included about 27% of the entire vote statewide, and that was still including Milwaukee County being separate. All right, and then Southwest was Southwest in 2016 and 18. There was no Dane County separate. Southwest overall was about 1 in 5, just under 18% of the vote. They have 19% for the Southwest now, even pulling out Milwaukee. So I needed a little clarification. I wanted a little bit of clarification. I stuck with the traditionals for right now, except I pulled Dane out, okay, of the Southwest. Like we always, honestly, I always did that anyway to make sure that Dane did not, because if you didn't, you would look at the Southwest region in its entirety and it would look too liberal. Donald Trump carries the Southwest. He carries it pretty handily. In 2016, he carried it 56-39. But then in 2020, he carried it 52-47. So it's very weird. It wasn't so. In any event, unless you hand them 40 grand, they don't take take requests. Not only not seriously, but they're in no rush to give you clarification. So I did the industry standard. I stuck with it. Only difference is that we did pull out Dane from the Southwest. All right. Which I always did anyway. Even if you look back at the Badger State poll from 2020, what you will see is that the Southwest is, of course, there, but Dane is taken out much like we explained in the PDF, much like we take out Dutch country from the Southeast and Pennsylvania. Is very, very, very misleading if you don't do that. All right. So in those areas, by the way, just trying to give an idea here. Yeah. I'd have to pull it back up again from the back. I don't want to do that. It's going to mess everything up. I was trying to give you an idea how different it is now. All right. Men more likely to vote than women. That's actually true, though, across the board, even with the likely equal to or greater than 50-50 probability. So this is definitely going to be a slightly female, but not much. How much? It's like 49.5% men, 50.5% female. It could be that I'm wrong about that, and it is more male. If so, obviously that would benefit Trump a little bit more. But I think we're pretty good here. Republicans have a serious outvote situation in the primary. And why is that? You have a lot of independents and others that want to participate if they are eligible. And that's different than 2020, which was pretty much even. What else? Even moderates. Look at moderates. Ideologically, moderates are roughly the same. That's something else. That just doesn't happen, folks. Does not happen. What else? Let me just make a real quick statement on Republican identification. This unsure, no opinion is so full of crap. The answers they give to other questions, they are very clearly America First Republicans. Not all of them, obviously. But they are much more America First than they are traditional Republicans. And you can see that here. Almost none of them are voting in the Democratic primary, as opposed to some Republicans who are like, maybe I'm going to switch this time. There is no party registration in Wisconsin. Remember that. All right. Several of these Rust Belt states don't have that. They only have affiliation. They do not have registration by party. You can declare when you, in some of these states, they do have what are called like, I declare I'm a Republican, give me a Republican ballot for the Republican primary. But they don't actually have registration. So it's so fluid. And again, Wisconsin has gotten more Republican over the years. It has. I was let me put it this way. How am I saying this the right way? I want to say this the right way. Leaving the regional weights the way they are makes it slightly more Democrat than I think it should be. So right now, the way it adjusts, it's about 1.5 or 1.5. So 36.6% are Republicans, 35.1% are Democrats. And you can clearly see Edison had a much, much stronger Republican electorate for the last presidential election. In the midterms, Democrats voted heavily, or I would say not heavily, but disproportionately. They came out for Mandela Barnes, then Republicans came out for Johnson, and Johnson damn near lost. He barely won a race by a point that he should have won by 3 or more. I'm serious. But that's how many Republicans stayed home, did not vote when Johnson was up for re-election. He got lucky because he won independents too, and it was enough to be able to hold on. Ideologically, it's 35% conservative, 40% moderate, 25% liberal. I mean, that's right on the money. White, 87 and change. African American, 6 and change. Hispanic, about 4. Asian and other, just about under 3. Income is dead on. It's all just dead on. That's why I don't want to touch anything. Urban, 30%. Suburban, around 40. Rural, around 30. That is dead on. A little young, but listen, I think as of this moment, young voters are just not going to come out. You know, I think it was like they were like 6 or 8% of the electorate in 22. It was pathetic. There were a lot more in 20, but it was pathetic in 22. About 14% in 18 to 29 was about 14% in 2020. We have it just below that. 21%, 30 to 41. That's really dead on. 45 to 64 is 40% of the electorate. Again, dead on. 65 plus 27. High school or less, 21%. Some college associate, 43. This is perfect. It's dead on. So I really just don't want to touch anything else. And that's why I was giving you that. I really think I like it when weighting efficiencies are like 98.9. I like that. I don't like to mess around. Anything above a 95, I'm stoked with. That's very high, and I'd like to keep it that way. I mean, it's a very representative sample. I barely had to apply any rakes and any weights, and we, happy to where we are. Joe Biden has a slight edge if you ask people who they voted for in 2020. It's like literally 1 or 2 interviews more. Overall, that's about right. It's a few tenths of a percentage point. So I'm good with that. I think that's dead on. I really do. Would a generic third party candidate actually, why am I jumping ahead here? It's 1:45. I got time. This is one of Trump's weaker states. He's still stronger than Iowa. Sorry. But he is not as strong in the primary, though he's dominant. All right, so in Minnesota, he was at 60%. In Pennsylvania, Michigan, largely the same thing. Ohio, the same thing. Iowa, he was at 51 and change. In Wisconsin, he's at 54.2. This doesn't surprise me at all. Wisconsin, especially on the Republican side, looks a lot more like Iowa than it does Pennsylvania or Michigan. It's more rural. It's more evangelical. There's a big evangelical vote. The difference this time, Trump is not at 30. Ted Cruz beat him in Wisconsin last time. Ted Cruz was winning the evangelical vote in Wisconsin and Iowa, nowhere else. But he got crushed in South Carolina. He got crushed in New Hampshire among evangelicals. But in this part of the country, Ted Cruz did better with evangelicals. Not this time. And we can actually show you that real quick. First, by religion, Trump is up 54-12 over DeSantis and 54-14 over Haley among Protestants. Among Catholics, Trump is up 55-14 over DeSantis, 55-11 over Haley. Among Jewish voters, actually, Nikki Haley is ahead. There's so few of them, it doesn't matter. It's such a tiny, tiny, tiny sample. Another religion, Trump is leading, and then no religion at all, which is a growing share even of the Republican primary electorate. I think it's incumbent on me to say that no religion is not the same as godless. It really should be no church, no affiliation, Because a lot of the people who tell us they have no religious affiliation, when you ask them, and we're going to do that, by the way, during the Christmas poll and the Easter poll. By the way, fund the national poll and we'll do the Christmas poll. That's really where we're at. Or maybe I'll put something up that says Christmas poll and I'll just put a lot less as the target. Because I really want to do the Christmas poll a lot. When you ask people and they say they have no religion, and then you have a follow-up question to those people using a little bit of logic. So do you believe in a creator, a God, somebody, grand architect who's behind all of it? Many of them still say yes. They do. They're not atheists. I mean, there are many who are, don't get me wrong, but they're not all atheists. They just don't have a religious affiliation. And Republicans struggle with that group. Not only in the primary, but in the general election, Donald Trump is doing much better than other Republican candidates ever have done, including himself. Including himself. He did not do well among this group in 2020. And yet, here we are. Crap, of course, doesn't work. All right, here's DeSantis's and everybody else's ultimate problem. Ted Cruz was able to eke out a win in Wisconsin. I think it was like 10 points or something like that because he did have the evangelical vote. Trump had the non-evangelical vote. Here, Trump has both. If he's evangelical, he's taking 57%. Not even white. I didn't separate white yet. We're going to do all that next week when we start to do deeper granular stuff, all right? And we start to do regression, stratification, post-stratification. 52% of those who are not evangelicals. So Trump actually performs better with evangelicals in Wisconsin than he does with those who are not. For those who say, that's too many evangelicals. I heard some ass say that already. I don't know why locals, it's for you when I do something like this and put it out early. You don't have to give it to people on Twitter, all right? That's for you. Anyway, very expectedly, some schmuck is like, that's a lot of evangelicals. Actually, it's really not. And in fact, in a general election, schmuck boy, evangelicals, when Donald Trump is on the ballot, can be anywhere between 25 to almost a third of the electorate in the state of Wisconsin, which he wins by more than 70%. And while I'm on the topic, for the tools who think they speak for evangelicals, you said the same stuff 4 years ago, 8 years ago. You just keep repeating the same crap. And then he goes on to win not only the largest share of evangelicals ever, but he drives more of them out than any other presidential candidate ever, including your coveted George W. Bush, who basically ran as America's first evangelical president before he murdered and maimed 1 million Iraqis. Super Christian of him. Go look at what George Bush won. 56, 58 of 20% of the vote. Oh, good. 18%. Good for him. All right, let's look by area. And as you can see in the suburbs again, he's winning them, but it is his weaker area. Trump, once again, here is putting together an urban and rural coalition. Honestly, this is a strong result for the state of Wisconsin for Donald Trump. This is an adequate sample size for a Republican primary, and he is still winning overwhelmingly. It's one of his weaker states in the Rust Belt when it comes to the primary, which nobody should be surprised by, but he is still winning it handily. 41 points is a big deal. All right, and he's at a majority. He's above 50. All right, let's look at the likely voter versus unlikely voter. Why isn't that in there? I forgot the likely versus unlikely in Wisconsin. Oh, no. That won't do. Oh, no, there it is. Okay, never mind. Among likely voters, he increases a tad. DeSantis falls a tad. Nikki Haley barely budges. Vivek Ramaswamy, falls a little bit. DeSantis, and this is the first and the only state where unlikely voters could help. The problem is Wisconsin voters are extremely likely to vote. So there's just not that many of them. Going to the unlikely voter model or unlikely voter subgroup again during the general is more significant than what we're seeing here. All right. Let's go by region. While we're at it, where are you? There's an area. Where in the hell is region? Did I not redo this? I know I put region in here. Bear with me for 1 second, guys. Badger State. Yeah, region is in here. Did I not save it? I may have to refresh the page. Hold on. Okay. Did I put it in the wrong place? Maybe I didn't save it. Maybe I didn't. Badger State. Region. All right, let's go again. I'll just pick area. It should populate. Ta-da! There it is. All right, so by region, Trump is up 57-15 over Haley in Milwaukee, 49-19 over Haley in Dane. In the rest of the Southeast, he's just crushing it, 55-17. Southwest, and by the way, why does that matter? That's wow. That's Paul Ryan's backyard. By the way, Paul Ryan and his butt buddy Mitt Romney lost his own backyard. They lost Kenosha and they lost Paul Ryan's congressional district to Barack Obama and Joe Biden. At least Trump holds Kenosha. At least he holds Racine. In the Southeast, he's beating DeSantis 55-17. So again, the never Trump vote is just not huge there. In the South, and is a large sample. In the Southwest, Trump is winning 59-19 over Haley, not even DeSantis. And DeSantis' support in Wisconsin is concentrated in the Southeast. You can see it clear as day. He's got some in the Northeast behind that, and then the Northwest behind that. But, I mean, honestly, Haley's going to put up some numbers. If it was held today, if we were doing this election today, Haley's going to put up some numbers, and she probably would surpass him. Why? Because there's a lot of votes in some of the places she's doing better. In the Southeast, he would need basically the Southeast to and the Northeast to hold her back everywhere else. I don't like that. I mean, I personally just don't find that to be a strong position. And then, of course, in the Northwest, we have very, very important part of the state when it comes to the general election. Ashland, Bayfield, right? How many times have we gone over this? Ashland, Bayfield, Douglas. Ashland, Bayfield, Douglas. They are included in that. There are a lot of the rest are Republican counties, but those are the blue strongholds in northwestern Wisconsin. Lumberjack country. 52.3 to 14 in the Northeast. Haley behind that at 6.2. Real quick with Joe Biden, I got 7 minutes. 70% in Milwaukee, 68% in Dane. I mean, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. I mean, I know he's friggin' delusional. This is one of his better states, 16% of undecideds. I know he's delusional and senile. They just, it's hard to beat an incumbent president for a nominate for anything, but especially for the renomination for their party. All right, so let's go by region. And actually, before we do that, let's go to cannot be persuaded. For the Democrats, I got time. I can blaze through this. As honestly, the press release isn't out anyway. You'll have more time to go through it. Once again, we have the president near 50-50. 53 cannot be persuaded. 47 can. All right. Marianne Williamson's 16 voters appear locked in. 10 out of Dean Phillips's 11. I mean, we're talking about such a small sample size, folks. I mean, I don't know what to glean from that. All right, here we have Donald Trump in one of his weakest, but still stronger than Joe Biden. 55 cannot be persuaded to change their mind. 45 can be, but look at it compared to everybody else. Not even 2 in 10 of Ron DeSantis's voters are unmovable. 1 in 10 of Nikki Haley's voters are unmovable. Only Vivek, I mean, we're getting the small samples now. Vivek, less than 2 in 10, well, less than 1 in 5. So, this even in his weakest, or because in Iowa, there are more unmovable people than there are in Wisconsin, even though he has a bigger margin. I don't know what to tell you guys. I mean, this is the same story everywhere else, even where it's like, oh, maybe there's some weakness here. Put it in its context. He's still got more solid support in the primary than Joe Biden does. And Joe Biden is not going to lose the primary unless something, I don't want to say it. I believe in the power of words, and I don't want to say it. Let's go to regions because they matter. I'm running. If I have to do something in 4 minutes, I'm going to do this. Again, in Milwaukee, he is at his target. In Dane, he is backward. In Dane, he is above already his targets. And I'm talking about Trump. He is already above it. He's slightly below it in Milwaukee, but you can see there are a lot more undecideds. So there you have it. I mean, he has more of a chance to gather them up, and he better hope he does, because Milwaukee is more votes than Dane. Although we're talking about 100,000, it's a huge chunk of votes in those two counties. Biden is performing pathetic. It's bad. In the Southeast, Trump is leading. The Southwest, Trump is leading. In the Northwest, Trump is leading. In the Northeast, Trump is leading. Why do I care about the Northwest so much? Here he is. He's going to win that region by a lot more than that. But here he is already at levels that he needs to be at in lumberjack country. That would be the weakest place in that region for Donald Trump, would be lumberjack country. Ashland, Bayfield, and Douglas. If he gets, and I'll give you what he did last time, Douglas, he got 44.4. Bayfield, 42.5. Bayfield is the more difficult of the three. And then in Ashland, he got basically 44. It's 43.98. When Johnson was able to hold on, for instance, Johnson was basically at 44 and 45 across the board in those counties. Trump has done that before. He did it in 16, by the way, even though he won other places by more. That is most assuredly enough. It's very difficult to argue that he would not carry the state today. And then, of course, in the Southwest, it's a small county, but I'm looking at Sauk. And when you go through, let me see if I have it up real quick. I do. When you go through in locals, you see it already. Guys, when you go out and you go through the map, go through the Southwest, for instance, in Sauk, small sample size, he's up 2-1. In the surrounding area, and this is why I love regression, it gets closer, but you're still looking at, if you were to do a real quick model just in that area, and which we'll go over next week, it's more like 42.5 to 47.5 in favor of Donald Trump. He won Sauk in 2016, and he lost it by 50.05 to 48.35 in 2020. All right, so that little swing tells you a lot. Sauk is a very important, used to be Juneau County at the presidential level being the bellwether. Trump is now way ahead in that kind of area. And you'll see that on the map. You'll just see red everywhere, all over that area. And then look at the Southeast, because when you're talking about the Racine area, just south of Milwaukee, you're talking about Kenosha and the county of Racine. And then obviously, in and around that, and you're going to see how much stronger he's doing than even he did in 2020. There's just no doubt about it. And he is outperforming even what I thought he would do in the Northwest. All right. So I'm running out of time. That sucks. We don't have that much time to tell you. So it's a Trump +2 in Wisconsin right now, but very, very close. If we go down the line, Trump v. Kennedy with Kennedy in it, turns into basically a same ballpark, really. It's almost no change. And then when you add all of these people to the ballot, it actually turns into a Trump +4. Trump's vote share rises in several of these states when you add more people. I know that's crazy. That's why next study, whether it's national, Rust Belt, wherever we go, we're also just going to add we're just going to be Biden, Trump, would not vote, undecided. And we'll see if one of those would not votes or undecided blows up, with those people who are picking another third party option. I actually don't think it's going to. I think we're going to just get higher margins, and then we'll be able to have a better comparison. The reason why we gave a third-party generic candidate, even for the so-called head-to-head this time, is because there are many of these states that we did in the Big Six where ballot access is possible. Pennsylvania, maybe not so much. But in Minnesota, that's going to happen. Libertarian will be on the ballot in Pennsylvania. Democrats were able to junk the Green Party off of Wisconsin, but still, Brian Carroll, Don Blankenship, as independents, and Joe Jorgensen were on the ballot. And Pennsylvania, Jorgensen won, but the Green Party and the independents were not. Minnesota, like I said, had 9 candidates. Iowa also, I believe, had 9. What is that? 3, 6, 9. Ohio had 4. It was just the Libertarian and Green. So very difficult to get on, the ballot in key states, but in this area of the country, it's a little bit easier than most others, to include the Sun Belt. Georgia, I hate to tell everybody, nobody's getting on the ballot in Georgia outside of the Libertarian, who might himself have, or herself, if he wins, if she might have a hard time. Although everyone thinks Lars is going to pull that out, but we'll see. All right, so 201, I guess that's it. Keep an eye to the press release. We'll have some out for Wisconsin. If you haven't gotten that link yet, just keep an eye. It's coming. Locals, you guys have had it. What else am I missing here? I'll be on Sean Parnell's Battleground tonight, 5 o'clock. Don't miss it, 5 p.m. We're going to talk about all of this. And listen, if you like the videos, as always, it really does help to do this. Like the videos and subscribe. And if you are on YouTube, don't forget to hit the notification bell. That'll let you know when we're going to go live. But you don't even have to do that on Rumble or on Locals. They will notify you immediately. So if you're on YouTube, mosey yourself on over to Rumble and go ahead and sign up and subscribe over there and like the stuff, like the videos. Of course, the best place, though, to follow us is on Locals. peoplespundit.locals.com. peoplespundit.locals.com. All right, with that in mind, we'll see you on Free Will on Friday, and I will talk to you guys on Locals in a little bit here. But again, don't miss Sean Parnell at 5. All right, all the best, folks. I will see you soon. Be safe. Be safe. Check out the man. Check out the interactive. Deuces.